Chapter 39. Capture at Gil'ead. Riding was extremely painful for Eragon. His broken ribs prevented them from going faster than a walk, and it was impossible for him to breathe deeply without a burst of agony. Nevertheless, he refused to stop. Saphira flew close by, her mind linked with his for solace and strength. Murtagh rode confidently beside Caddoc, flowing smoothly with his horse's movements. Eragon watched the grey animal for a while. "You have a beautiful horse. What's his name?" "Tornak, after the man who taught me how to fight." Murtagh patted the horse's side. "He was given to me when he was just a foal. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more courageous and intelligent animal in all of Allegatia." Saphira accepted, of course. "He's a magnificent beast," said Eragon admiringly. Murtagh laughed. "Yes, but Snowfire is as close to his match as I've ever seen." They covered only a short distance that day, yet Eragon was glad to be on the move again. It kept his mind off other, more morbid matters. They were riding through unsettled land. The road to Drasleona was several leagues to their left. They would skirt the city by a wide margin on the way to Gil'ead, which was almost as far to the north as Carverhall. They sold Caddoc in a small village. As the horse was led away by his new owner, Eragon regretfully pocketed the few coins he had gained from the transaction. It was difficult to relinquish Caddoc after crossing half of Allegatia and outracing Urgles on him. The days rolled by unnoticed as their small group travelled in isolation. Eragon was pleased to find that he and Murtagh shared many of the same interests. They spent hours debating the finer points of archery and hunting. There was one subject, however, they avoided discussing by unspoken consent: their pasts. Eragon did not explain how he had found Saphira, met Brom, or where he came from. Murtagh was likewise mute as to why the Empire was chasing him. It was a simple arrangement, but it worked. Yet, because of their proximity, it was inevitable that they learned about each other. Eragon was intrigued by Murtagh's familiarity with the power struggles and politics within the Empire. He seemed to know what every noble and courtier was doing and how it affected everyone else. Eragon listened carefully, suspicions whirling through his mind. The first week went by without any sign of the Razak, which allayed some of Eragon's fears. Even so, they still kept watches at night. Eragon had expected to encounter Urgles on the way to Gil'ead, but they found no trace of them. "I thought these remote places would be teeming with monsters," he mused. "Still, I'm not one to complain if they've gone elsewhere." He dreamed of the woman no more, and though he tried to scry her, he saw only an empty cell. Whenever they passed a town or city, he checked to see if it had a jail. If it did, he would disguise himself and visit it. But she was not to be found. His disguises became increasingly elaborate, and he saw notices featuring his name and description, and offering a substantial reward for his capture, posted in various towns. Their travels north forced them toward the capital, Urubain. It was a heavily populated area, which made it difficult to escape notice. Soldiers patrolled the roads and guarded the bridges. It took them several tense, irritable days to skirt the capital. Once they were safely past Urubain, they found themselves on the edge of a vast plain. It was the same one that Eragon had crossed after leaving Palancar Valley, except now he was on the opposite side. They kept to the perimeter of the plain and continued north, following the Rama River. Eragon's 16th birthday came and went during this time. At Carverhall, a celebration would have been held for his entrance into manhood, but in the wilderness he did not even mention it to Murtagh. At nearly 6 months of age, Saphira was much larger. Her wings were massive, every inch of them was needed to lift her muscular body and thick bones. The fangs that jutted from her jaw were nearly as thick around as Eragon's fists, their points as sharp as Zarok. The day finally came when Eragon unwrapped his side for the last time. His ribs had healed completely, leaving him with only a small scar where the Razak's boot had cut his side. As Saphira watched, he stretched slowly, then with increasing vigour when there was no pain. He flexed his muscles, pleased. In an earlier time he would have smiled, but after Brom's death, such expressions did not come easily. He tugged his tunic on and walked back to the small fire they had made. Murtagh sat next to it, whittling a piece of wood. Eragon drew Zarok. Murtagh tensed, though his face remained calm. "Now that I'm strong enough, would you like to spar?" asked Eragon. Murtagh tossed the wood to the side. "With sharpened swords? We could kill each other." "Here, give me your sword," said Eragon. Murtagh hesitated, then handed over his long hand-and-a-half sword. Eragon blocked the edges with magic, the way Brom had taught him. While Murtagh examined the blade, Eragon said, "I can undo that once we're finished." Murtagh checked the balance of his sword. Satisfied, he said, "It will do." Eragon saved Zarok, settled into a crouch, then swung at Murtagh's shoulder. Their swords met in midair. Eragon disengaged with a flourish, thrust, and then riposted as Murtagh parried, dancing away. He's fast, thought Eragon. They struggled back and forth, trying to batter each other down. After a particularly intense series of blows, Murtagh started laughing. Not only was it impossible for either of them to gain an advantage, but they were so evenly matched that they tried at the same rate. Acknowledging with grins each other's skill, they fought on until their arms were leaden and sweat poured off their sides. Finally, Eragon called, "Enough! Halt!" Murtagh stopped mid-blow and sat down with a gasp. Eragon staggered to the ground, his chest heaving. None of his fights with Brom had been this fierce. As he gulped air, Murtagh exclaimed, "You're amazing! I've studied swordplay all my life, but never have I fought one like you. You could be the king's weapon master if you wanted to." "You're just as good," observed Eragon, still panting. "The man who taught you, Tornak, could make a fortune with a fencing school. People would come from all parts of Allegatia to learn from him." "He's dead," said Murtagh shortly. "I'm sorry." Thus it became their custom to fight in the evening, which kept them lean and fit, like a pair of matched blades. With his return to health, Eragon also resumed practicing magic. Murtagh was curious about it and soon revealed that he knew a surprising amount about how it worked, though he lacked the precise details and could not use it himself. Whenever Eragon practiced speaking in the ancient language, Murtagh would listen quietly, occasionally asking what a word meant. On the outskirts of Gil'ead, they stopped the horses side by side. It had taken them nearly a month to reach it, during which time spring had finally nudged away the remnants of winter. Eragon felt himself changing during the trip, growing stronger and calmer. He still thought about Brom and spoke about him with Saphira, but for the most part he tried not to awaken painful memories. From a distance they could see the city was a rough, barbaric place, filled with log houses and yapping dogs. There was a rambling stone fortress at its centre. The air was hazy with blue smoke. The place seemed more like a temporary trading post than a permanent city. 5 miles beyond it was the hazy outline of Eisenstar Lake. They decided to camp 2 miles from the city, for safety. While their dinner simmered, Murtagh said, "I'm not sure you should be the one to go into Gil'ead." "Why? I can disguise myself well enough," said Eragon, "and Dormnad will want to see the Gedway Ignacia as proof that I really am a rider." "Perhaps," said Murtagh, "but the Empire wants you much more than me. If I'm captured, I could eventually escape, but if you are taken, they'll drag you to the king where you'll be in for a slow death by torture. Unless you join him. Plus, Gil'ead is one of the army's major staging points. Those aren't houses out there, they're barracks. Going in there would be like handing yourself to the king on a gilded platter." Eragon asked Saphira for her opinion. She wrapped her tail around his legs and lay next to him. "You shouldn't have to ask me. He speaks sense. There are certain words I can give him that will convince Dormnad of his truthfulness. And Murtagh's right. If anyone is to risk capture, it should be him, because he would live through it." He grimaced. "I don't like letting him put himself in danger for us." "All right, you can go," he said reluctantly. "But if anything goes wrong, I'm coming after you." Murtagh laughed. That would be fit for a legend. How a lone rider took on the king's army single-handedly. He chuckled again and stood. "Is there anything I should know before going?" "Shouldn't we rest and wait until tomorrow?" asked Eragon cautiously. "Why? The longer we stay here, the greater the chance that we'll be discovered. If this Dormnad can take you to the Varden, then he needs to be found as quickly as possible. Neither of us should remain near Gil'ead longer than a few days." "Again, wisdom flies from his mouth," commented Saphira dryly. She told Eragon what should be said to Dormnad, and he relayed the information to Murtagh. "Very well," said Murtagh, adjusting his sword. "Unless there's trouble, I'll be back within a couple of hours. Make sure there's some food left for me." With a wave of his hand, he jumped onto Tornak and rode away. Eragon sat by the fire, tapping Zarok's pommel apprehensively. Hours passed, but Murtagh did not return. Eragon paced around the fire, Zarok in hand, while Saphira watched Gil'ead attentively. Only her eyes moved. Neither of them voiced their worries, though Eragon unobtrusively prepared to leave, in case a detachment of soldiers left the city and headed toward their camp. "Look," snapped Saphira. Eragon swiveled toward Gil'ead, alert. He saw a distant horseman exit the city and ride furiously toward their camp. "I don't like this," he said as he climbed onto Saphira. "Be ready to fly. I am prepared for more than that." As the rider approached, Eragon recognized Murtagh bent low over Tornak. No one seemed to be pursuing him, but he did not slow his reckless pace. He galloped into the camp and jumped to the ground, drawing his sword. "What's wrong?" asked Eragon. Murtagh scowled. "Did anyone follow me from Gil'ead?" "We didn't see anyone." "Good. Then let me eat before I explain. I'm starving." He seized a bowl and began eating with gusto. After a few sloppy bites, he said through a full mouth, "Dormnad has agreed to meet us outside Gil'ead at sunrise tomorrow. If he's satisfied you really are a rider and that it's not a trap, he'll take you to the Varden." "Where are we supposed to meet him?" asked Eragon. Murtagh pointed west, on a small hill across the road. "So what happened?" Murtagh spooned more food into his bowl. "It's a rather simple thing, but all the more deadly because of it. I was seen in the street by someone who knows me. I did the only thing I could and ran away. It was too late, though. He recognized me." It was unfortunate, but Eragon was unsure how bad it really was. "Since I don't know your friend, I have to ask, will he tell anyone?" Murtagh gave a strained laugh. "If you had met him, that wouldn't need answering. His mouth is loosely hinged and hangs open all the time, vomiting whatever happens to be in his mind. The question isn't whether he will tell people, but whom he will tell. If word of this reaches the wrong ears, we'll be in trouble." "I doubt that soldiers will be sent to search for you in the dark," Eragon pointed out. "We can at least count on being safe until morning, and by then, if all goes well, we'll be leaving with Dormnad." Murtagh shook his head. "No, only you will accompany him. As I said before, I won't go to the Varden." Eragon stared at him unhappily. He wanted Murtagh to stay. They had become friends during their travels, and he was loath to tear that apart. He started to protest, but Saphira hushed him and said gently, "Wait until tomorrow. Now is not the time." "Very well," he said glumly. They talked until the stars were bright in the sky, then slept as Saphira took the first watch. Eragon woke 2 hours before dawn, his palm tingling. Everything was still and quiet, but something sought his attention, like an itch in his mind. He buckled on Zarok and stood, careful not to make a sound. Saphira looked at him curiously, her large eyes bright. "What is it?" she asked. "I don't know," said Eragon. He saw nothing amiss. Saphira sniffed the air curiously. She hissed a little and lifted her head. "I smell horses nearby, but they're not moving. They reek with an unfamiliar stench." Eragon crept to Murtagh and shook his shoulder. Murtagh woke with a start, yanked a dagger from under his blankets, then looked at Eragon quizzically. Eragon motioned for him to be silent, whispering, "There are horses close by." Murtagh wordlessly drew his sword. They quietly stationed themselves on either side of Saphira, prepared for an attack. As they waited, the morning star rose in the east. A squirrel chattered. Then an angry snarl from behind made Eragon spin around, sword held high. A broad Urgle stood at the edge of the camp, carrying a mattock with a nasty spike. "Where did he come from? We haven't seen their tracks anywhere," thought Eragon. The Urgle roared and waved his weapon, but did not charge. "Brisinga!" barked Eragon, stabbing out with magic. The Urgle's face contorted with terror as he exploded in a flash of blue light. Blood splattered Eragon, and a brown mass flew through the air. Behind him, Saphira bugled with alarm and reared. Eragon twisted around. While he had been occupied with the first Urgle, a group of them had run up from the side. Of all the stupid tricks to fall for! Steel clashed loudly as Murtagh attacked the Urgles. Eragon tried to join him, but was blocked by 4 of the monsters. The first one swung a sword at his shoulder. He ducked the blow and killed the Urgle with magic. He caught a second one in the throat with Zarok, wheeled wildly, and slashed a third through the heart. As he did, the 4th Urgle rushed at him, swinging a heavy club. Eragon saw him coming and tried to lift his sword to block the club, but was a second too slow. As the club came down onto his head, he screamed, "Fly, Saphira!" A burst of light filled his eyes, and he lost consciousness.